Good evening. Welcome to this special meeting of the Matthews Board of Commissioners. We're going to discuss an incident that happened during our last town council meeting. I'm going to dispense with introductions tonight and start by reading a statement that I prepared. Penny and I moved to Matthews when our children were very young. We chose Matthews to raise a family for many reasons, but chief among them was the inclusionary nature of the community. All are welcome here, regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, or lack thereof, sexual orientation, disability status, or age. Matthews was and is a community that embraces everyone. That's why it was particularly disturbing for me to learn of the Zoom bombing incident that occurred during our last town council meeting on February 26th. I was unable to attend the meeting because I was tending to some other business out of state, but I learned about it in real time. First, allow me to thank staff, and in particular, Mayor Pro Tem Gina Hoover, who was presiding over a town council meeting for the first time, for handling a very stressful and unfortunate situation in a very professional manner. The media calls these incidents Zoom bombings, so I guess that implies the perpetrators are Zoom bombers, but I have another name for them. With apologies to the insect, I prefer to use the term virtual cockroaches. These people scurry about the dark web away from the naked light of day. They hide behind blank screens and false identities, and they use AI-altered voices to spew their putrid and hateful ideologies. Let me be clear. I fully support the First Amendment, which guarantees freedoms concerning religion, expression, assembly, and the right to petition. But for Matthews to simply wring our hands and say, woe are we must subject ourselves to these hateful diatribes or we risk stepping on First Amendment rights is simply hogwash. Exposing Matthews staff members, our residents, and most importantly, our children to such salacious, disgusting, and hate-filled rhetoric is, in my view, unacceptable. And for us as town leaders to do nothing to try to curb such attacks in the future is a dereliction of our duty. So tonight I'm making 3 proposals to address this issue. Number 1, I suggest that we immediately suspend the use of Zoom as a platform for public comment. And number 2, I also suggest the immediate suspension of written comments as a means of public comment. These 2 comment opportunities were only made available during the COVID pandemic. Matthews operated for the previous 141 years without Zoom or without a written comment option, and during this time, no First Amendment right was violated. If you wanted to make a comment, you had to come to town hall and make your comment during our board meeting in person. I would like to go back to the in-person option only, and most North Carolina towns and cities have already made this change. My third proposal is to codify the asking of public commenters to provide their name and address so this information can be recorded as part of our official meeting record. I've done this since being elected mayor, but this requirement is not recorded in our organizational resolution or rules of procedure. And I would now like to turn the meeting over to our town manager, Becky Hawk, to review a memo that she prepared in preparation for this meeting that talks about a few of the items that I just discussed. Thank you. Becky?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. So if you had an opportunity to review it, I did prepare a memo, just some background information for the board to just take in and be able to use as perhaps a guiding document to your discussion tonight. So the first area that the memo touches on just really focuses on methods of public participation, just discussing that as the mayor mentioned during the pandemic, the board did expand methods allowed to include Zoom remote participation as well as written public comments. Prior to that, it was in person only. And so, Maureen, if you can scroll down to the next page, one more page. So Lori has been working over the last few days to gather information from some of our neighbors just to provide context into what is happening around us when boards meet for their regular meetings. And so we were able to gather information from most of our neighbors before tonight's meeting, and it reflected that out of Mecklenburg County, Charlotte, and the surrounding towns, Only Mecklenburg County currently also allows remote participation, but you'll notice the asterisk next to that dot. They are also considering ending their Zoom remote participation, was the information that we got back today. But other than that, all of the others did offer that opportunity during the pandemic, but since the restrictions on meeting in person have been lifted, they have gone back almost entirely to their traditional methods. The only exception to that was Davidson. You see the asterisk for audio recording. That was a voicemail option that they implemented during the pandemic as a way to address the inability to meet in person. They have retained that option since the restrictions were lifted, but they said it's been about a year since anyone has utilized that option to be able to provide public comment to their board. Charlotte does allow written comments, but otherwise everyone has to be in person. And Maureen, if you can scroll down just a little bit to try to capture the towns. Otherwise, Mint Hill, Pineville, Cornelius, Huntersville should be marked there. They are also in-person only. Davidson, Stallings, and Indian Trail, they allow the in-person. Indian Trail does, it looks like, also have the written option, but nothing remote at this time. So a lot of other information was gathered related to the time that is allowed, if there are other restrictions on maximums allowed, the information that is required or not to be provided related to the speaker. So this is really just to provide context about what is happening around you if you want to sort of know where the town falls in regard to anybody else. Again, just a reference document. Maureen, if you can scroll back up to the text of the memo. As the mayor mentioned, the methods of participation are not currently outlined in the board's rules of procedure or any of the organizational resolutions. So this was informal action by the board to expand your options during the pandemic. And so in speaking with the town attorney, if the board wishes to make any changes to the methods tonight, that would simply be an action of the board to make that. And if a majority passes that, then that effect can go into place immediately. So we could then, as early as your March 11th meeting, be utilizing those new methods. If you scroll down to manner of public participation, before I get to that though it was done informally and you can change it informally, just as a best practice, we would look to add that to the rules of procedure and get that on an upcoming board agenda just so that it's very clearly in the rules going forward. Related to manner of public participation, I was able to locate a guide by Professor Freda Bluestein of the UNC School of Government. She is really one of the statewide experts on constitutional issues and public meeting laws. And she provided a really thorough Coates Canons article back in 2016 that just speaks to public comment periods as limited public forums, and that there can be, with limited options, rules that a board can adopt in order to focus on what is said and done during those meetings. She's very careful that it must be narrowly tailored, and that a board would want to be very careful with anything that is considered so as not to infringe on anyone's First Amendment rights. So that entire Coates Canons article was provided with the memo, and there's the link if anyone wants to find it online separately. Again, just a reference document if there are any suggestions that are discussed related to any restrictions beyond the current 5-minute time limit that is currently on our public comment periods. You can scroll down. So as noted, the name and address for the record is not presently in the board's rules of procedure. If that is something that the board wishes to implement, it could be passed tonight sort of informally, and then we would look to include it in a rules of procedure update as early as your March 11th meeting, along with anything else that the board might want to consider related to content. But we have, of course, our town attorney, Charlie Buckley, and then also attorney Daniel Peterson is here to be able to help the board with any discussion related to policies and practices in general, as well as anything related to First Amendment protections specifically. So with that, Mayor, I will turn it back over to you. It looks like town attorney Buckley may want to add in.
Thank you. I just wanted to add one more thing to what the county does. they do remote, but they are looking, I'm aware that they're looking into changing that, but they also limit what can be brought up. And I think that's important why they've maintained, because they've used Professor Bluestein's commentary that it's lawful to limit it to what you have authority, what your unit of government has authority and jurisdiction to discuss. And if they're coming in to discuss something else, you can say, I'm sorry, but that's not germane to this meeting. So I just wanted to add that the county does have that also. So that adds to the effectiveness of why they maintain some remoteness. The illustration to me was because we don't want somebody coming in and talking about CMPD and we have nothing to do with it. So and they've been doing this for their whole remote period.
Go ahead. Becky, you had another comment?
Sure. I just wanted to add to that. Mr. Buckley is correct. And that was also information that Lori gathered when she did contact all of the towns. So we do have notes from all of the towns and county and city that provided that information. Some of them do have restrictions similar to what Mr. Buckley referenced. Some don't. They all do it a little bit differently. But if the board is interested in looking at it through that lens, we do have that in an Excel that we can pull up for the board at any point tonight or at a later date.
I'll get you in just a second. I want to make a couple clarifying comments. I am a little concerned about that because it's very difficult for the presiding officer to decide what is and isn't germane to town business. So that may be a bridge too far for us initially. We'll certainly discuss it with everyone here tonight, but I did want to make that distinction. Also, I want to add another clarifying comment with regards to requiring in-person participation. If someone is an invalid or unable to come here, they could always give their comment to a neighbor or a friend or a family member. They could come in here and make the public comment, and nothing precludes anyone from writing any or all of us that are elected officials or staff with regards to any comment they want to make about the town or whatever they want to make a comment about. I'd like to first go to Commissioner Garner. Did you have a comment? And then I'll get you, Commissioner Tufano.
Could we bring up the rules of procedure? From what we looked at it during the planning conference briefly, and maybe I was looking at the wrong copy, but if we could pull it up and look at what it says under public comment, what I found, and again, in a rush this afternoon, it says at least one time per month, the board will provide a period for public comment. Any individual or group wishing to make a comment under the board's public comment section may do so by making a request to the town clerk prior to the meeting. Speakers are limited to 4 minutes or less. All comments should be civil in nature and speak to the issue at hand. Speakers should address their comments to the board and not the audience. The board does not take action on public comment, but may refer the matter to staff for follow-up. But in my mind, that all comments should be civil in nature and speak to the issue at hand implies that comments should pertain to the issues that we're discussing in town board duties. Would you agree, or does that need to be clarified, Attorney Buckley?
Well, that's one of those areas. I'm not sure that by itself that's enough to overcome true First Amendment rights. But that also addresses where the board can, the presiding officer can say, would you please refrain from using, say, cursing or language like that, but not to stop the expression.
I was focusing more on speak to the issue at hand.
Yeah.
And if that implies board responsibilities and duties. Excuse me.
Mr. Peterson, do you have a comment on that? Maybe not, but I'll call you out anyway.
That would need to be clarified.
Mr. Tufano.
Yes, pertaining to the particular issue of the evening, the state statute for public comment only requires us to have one meeting, one public comment period per month. We have 2 meetings per month, and we blessed we're blessed with having public comment in both of those meetings. If we were to only have one in a month, then any subject that were to have occurred at the next meeting would not been able to be covered, because if we're making it pertinent to that particular meeting, then those future meeting issues would not be covered. So I think we need to be careful how we word that. I think it's a good thought, but there are issues that need to be considered when we're doing that.
Yes, it does say at least one time, and you're correct that as long as I can remember, we've always allowed public comment at every meeting for many, many decades. Commissioner Garner.
When we reviewed the rules and procedures in 2022, we discussed that specifically, I believe, if I remember correctly, because there are months where we only have one meeting. And we didn't want to say we would have two public comments and have to come in and have a meeting specifically for public comment.
Fair point. That's good memory. Thank you. Anybody? Commissioner McCool.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly speak. I concur with the mayor's suggestions of the night. I think that is a logical move forward, and I would fully support adding those to our rules and procedures.
Commissioner Tofano.
So we have people coming in. Let's say we have people coming in person, and let's say they do come to the podium in person and they give their name and their address as what our new requirement will be. What if they actually said exactly what was said during the Zoom meeting when they were coming in remotely and virtually and saying that? So in other words, talking about what we can stop and what we can't, is if someone were to stand there and actually spew that vitriol, is there something that we can do, or is it their First Amendment right to let them just continue to speak?
It's my understanding in our current rules and regulations, we would have to allow them to speak, but it's been my experience that these type folks don't frequently come in person. They're probably not even in our state. This is somebody far, far away, and we're making it really easy to anonymously say this type of language. It's much less likely they would come in person, but if they did, per your point, and they, under our current rules, we would have to allow them to say their piece. I just think we're limiting some options. We're making it much more difficult to do that.
And I agree with that, but I just wanted to ask the question because it was important that it was asked. If and when that situation should occur, we need to be prepared to deal with it.
Mr. Peterson?
Thank you. I'm glad to address that question, Commissioner Tofano. As the mayor indicated, generally speaking, you would have to let them speak their piece just because, again, it's the litigator in me wants to say you could fight that, but the constitutional kind of analysis would suggest that if you did want to do something about, let's say, an obscenity or obscene gestures, that would at least have to be in your rules of procedure. And even then, we would want to be very careful from a First Amendment analysis. And so the best and safest course of action is let folks come and say their name and their address and spew their vitriol.
A follow-up on that.
Yes, sir.
There's no way for us to determine whether or not that's that real name and address.
That is a fair point, sir. Yes.
Yes. So any individual could come in, any name, any address, and they don't have to be a Matthews resident. In our history, we've not made that limitation.
That's correct.
So they could come up, give a fictitious name, a fictitious address, and then start this vitriol. And technically, there's nothing we can do about it.
Under the current rules and likelihood, yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Let me make a few comments. If in that unfortunate incident did happen, I think that person would be called out by the community that, hey, this is not who the person said they are. They don't live where they said they do. I think the best course of action is to do what I suggested tonight. Let's not make it easy to spew this vitriol. If it continues to be a problem, I would like to meet with Mr. Peterson and we can tailor something that says what you speak about must be germane to the issue at hand, or something that we have some control over. But for right now, I would prefer just to leave it open. I've been an elected official here in Matthews for 10 years. We have, in the last 10 years, have never had anybody come up and during the public comment period and spew the kind of garbage that was spoken at our last meeting.
And I just want to make a closing comment to my questions, and that is that I am in full agreement with what's being proposed here tonight, and I think it's necessary to do that. I also found it necessary to ask those questions because of the public's need to know that if this happens again and somebody's standing there and they're spewing this vitriol, that there's technically, according to our Constitution, which we have been sworn to uphold and defend, that there's really nothing much we can do.
Yes, sir.
No need to make it easy. No need to make somebody that is far, far away from here, give them an easy, ready, anonymous platform to spew that garbage.
Mr. Mayor, if I just may make one additional comment to the proposal tonight, I've studied the issue, and everything you are proposing is completely lawful and constitutional, sir. I just want to make sure that's out there.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoover.
I have a question. Let's say we have someone come to the podium and speak and they start what I call the hate speech, and I know that's a fine line, but do we as a board have the authority, and we're not going to deny them their right to speak, but do we have the right to stop them and let the board maybe speak with our attorney and find out exactly, is this are they in violation? Can we actually tell them we can stop you, or no, they can move forward? But we're not telling, well, we would tell them we are going to allow you to speak, but we're going to take a break right now and figure this out. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't know if the board has the right to do that. So that's what I would like to know.
That's a great question. As I stand here today, I believe the answer to that would be yes, you could, as long as you came back and then allotted them their full time. That would be that would be the crucial distinction there, and certainly part of your question.
Exactly. We wouldn't deny it. We would just tell them we would take a break. We'll be right back. We will allow you to finish your speech if they can move forward with it.
If I may provide an example that might come up, something, someone that says, I committed the Zodiac murders or something like that, and they go on in vivid detail about how they killed folks, you might want to take a break and set, just to give you some sort of context. So kind of came up with that on the fly. Sorry for that example.
Well, a pretty gruesome example. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Tufano.
Yes, as a follow-up to Mayor Pro Tem Hoover's comments, is there a document after all the litigation over all these years with all levels of courts, is there a document that definitively describes what is not protected speech under the First Amendment?
As a Supreme Court justice famously said, related to the First Amendment, you know it when you see it. But no, I don't mean to be glib, sir. No, it's there's nothing quite to that level of specificity. But I'm glad, and as I'm sure Mr. Buckley is, to kind of gather some cases that kind of give you the body of work from the First Amendment perspective. There's no one single document or case. I will say locally, as Ms. Hawk brought up, that Freda Bluestein is top notch, and some of her blog posts and papers, I commend those to you. But from a perspective of what one document, I think we would just want to gather some cases and walk you through them. Does that answer your question, sir?
Well, one last follow-up to that, Charlie, is then if we were to recognize an unprotected speech, then we have all the right to stop that speaker at that point. Is that correct?
Yes, because is that point not a First Amendment violation? I will say with the caveat that you are a governmental entity. So if you stop one and somebody gets up and does the same exact thing, you should stop them.
Of course.
Yes, sir.
That's the reason it's very difficult for the presiding officer who has control over the etiquette of the meeting to make a determination if this is unprotected speech or not. And that's why I was asking if there was a detailed document that outlined at least examples of unprotected speech.
If I could say, the way I understand it, and we have a couple attorneys here that can correct me if I'm wrong, but if somebody gets up and speaks and incites violence, I think we should kill everybody in this room. That is not protected speech, and we can shut them down. So if they're inciting physical violence against somebody, I'm going to shut them down. And maybe I don't know if that's protected or not, but my understanding is that's not protected, and we're not going to allow somebody to threaten other people or violence. So I don't know if the attorneys want to comment on that, but that's how it's been explained to me by someone smarter than me.
Yes, sir. And to again offer, I'm glad to, in consultation with Mr. Buckley and Ms. Hawk and anybody else on the board for that matter, to gather such a document for the town, if that would be something you'd all be interested in.
And I was going to say just a minute ago, if I may, Mayor, that about the one document, these types of cases are all fact-based, and every case is different. So you could not ever develop a one document, what is and what is not. And it's all fact-based. And as Daniel has said, you can get several cases and you can draw inferences from them if your fact base fits in any of these. But there's always distinctions, and you don't know what a court is going to rule until it rules on your case. And so it's always after, quote, the fact that you learn whether what you did was lawful or whether it was unconstitutional. And so that's the difficulty with this, because it always has to be your facts in litigation with a court determination of whether you did or did not violate the Constitution. So that's the problem here.
Commissioner Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I definitely support your recommendations because myself, I respect the First Amendment, but I strongly condemn the hateful rhetoric we heard the other night. But you stole my thunder a little bit in that conversation about threats and violence, because I received a lot of emails, and there's a lot of opinions out there. There's a lot of wannabe attorneys and a lot of real attorneys emailing and saying, well, there was hate speech in there and there was implied threats, et cetera. So obviously when we're sitting up here and we're getting barraged, it's very hard to triage that very quickly. But I guess to some of the conversations about violence and all, a lot of folks said that there were implied threats in that Zoom bombing taking place. Would that have been an opportunity at that point in time, or is it going on so quickly that you sort of have to let go with the flow and let it out because you can't cherry pick those specifics?
Not without risk, to be sure. And I think the kind of bellwether on that is, and that's why I think returning to in-person comments this is another fix for that, because you're looking at kind of what is the clear and present danger of those threats, of those implied threats. And so that if they're standing in the room, that's a little more of a clear and present danger than somebody coming in, remotely.
Well, and threats made virtually, obviously, you could say almost anything. So that's why I do like and support the plan, the pre-COVID plan from that aspect of it. But I received a lot of emails. I'm sure other board members did. It says, well, you could have shut it down because they made threats. And the better part of valor, to my point, was no, unfortunately, I don't know how to disseminate that. I'm not an attorney. I don't know whether to speak to that. So you've answered my question. Thank you very much. But Mr. Mayor, I definitely support your recommendations.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Mr. Buckley.
So to go along with what you've recommended, Mayor, and I think we need to address one more matter, and that is your public notice of the comment section. If you're going to be giving notice, you're going to have to start carefully, as they say, drafting it narrowly to let them know what is and is not allowed. But don't, right now you're saying you may comment on anything. You might even just want to just say public comment and not say anything, because that's what opened up for these people to come in the other day. Is all of our public comments tend to say may come and address on anything. So I would add that to your list of things to present tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban.
Just to sort of piggyback on that, I've heard that conversation going on. In 13 years of being on the board, normally it's always been somebody standing where Mr. Peterson is yelling at me. I've never had it in the global sense, but we've gotten a lot of public comments that you wouldn't find are germane to the meeting or anything. It's like, I'm not happy with trash collection. There's too much smog or dirt because of an adjacent construction project, or my children don't feel safe walking on this sidewalk or something. So I don't know. I think to your point, Mr. Mayor, is maybe we need to sort of take initial steps and kind of monitor the situation. But I'd hate to restrict somebody that had a legitimate concern that was not germane to the conversation.
Let me make some additional clarifying comments that I think are important. This prohibition that I'm suggesting regarding public comment would extend to our public hearings for zoning applications. So it would include both of those. However, it would not preclude an elected official. For instance, if Commissioner Tofano is out of town and he wants to watch the meeting or participate remotely, he could do that, as well as staff. So we're talking only about the public comment. Public comment during zoning would be the prohibition. Commissioner Tofano.
Yes, to follow up on Commissioner Urban's comments, that was where I was going as well. I mean, we have a lot of people that come in. We even have political candidates making political speeches. We have people that are want to actually commend one of the staff departments or something of that nature. So to just have general language where it's germane to that particular meeting might cause some stifling of comments that would be of great benefit to the community. So like I said, it's in my previous statement, we have to be very careful how we word that.
Mr. Buckley.
I used the word germane. I surely should not have. And right this second, I'm sorry, I used the word germane. But what I was talking about was within your jurisdiction or authority to possibly limit a comment like the county does. But germane absolutely is that meeting and that meeting only. And I don't think you could ever leave that to comments, because you could talk about it, as it was discussed earlier, as something in a future meeting, so long as it was within your jurisdiction and authority for somebody to mention that. But germane is not the word I should have used.
And again, I think what the intent here is to not make it easy to give hateful speech, but not to otherwise limit folks' First Amendment rights. So I don't particularly care if a citizen comes in here and wants to talk about the safety of the sidewalk, and that's nothing that it's on our agenda. I'm okay with that. I don't want to restrict their ability to do that. I would not want to further restrict it at all unless it becomes a problem when we have people lining up at the podium that are spewing the same vitriol that we heard the other night. Commissioner Tofano.
Yes, need your opinion on something. There's an organization called the Congressional Research Service. Are you familiar with them?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, they did a rather definitive document dated 2019 that categorizes what's not protected under the First Amendment, and also backs it up with state statutes. Excuse me, U.S. statutes and laws and case law, etc. If I were to send this document to you, would you be so kind as to review it and see if it's adequate for us to use as a guide?
I'd be glad to review it, sir.
Okay, thank you.
You good, Commissioner Threet? Commissioner McCool.
First, I want to commend staff for the way everything's been handled, and bringing in Daniel to help guide us, and Attorney Buckley for helping make sure that we're on the up and up legally. I feel really comfortable with what's been suggested tonight because of that, and really want to commend y'all on staff. With that being said, I'd like to go ahead and make the motion that we remove the Zoom public comment option from our meetings. That we codify that you must state your name and address in our rules and procedures, and that we take away the written comment option for public comment.
And I'll second that.
So I have a motion by Commissioner McCool, a second by Commissioner Garner. Is there any further discussion?
Now, this is where I get to play. Let's change that a little bit. That's effective immediately. And and we codify that later, but effective immediately. Those are our rules.
I'll accept those amendments
So that next meeting, that's in place.
immediately. Correct.
Maureen, do we have anybody online that wants to comment? I'm saying that facetiously. I'm sorry. Myself. So we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. I think that serves the purpose of tonight's meeting.
I do want to bring up
Threet?
another matter that's related a little to this subject matter. I don't know if this is the right setting for it, but in my experience in law enforcement and in the military, when an incident occurs, we back up and do an assessment of the incident. And the idea from that is to come away with some factors and facts to improve our ability to lead or to address an issue. In law enforcement, it would be to come away with and mitigate any kind of emotional shock or trauma, but also to learn from it. So part of what I want us to consider is, what did we learn from this as a board, and what can we take away and gain ground from? Now, again, this might not be the best setting for it, but I came away and asked some hard questions about myself and about our board. And one of the things I'm reminded of, and this was a somewhat minor crisis, but we have no guarantee that we will not have more critical and urgent matters to unfold in our midst. And I was reminded how important it is for us to work together as a board and mitigate and solve the problems that face our community. I'm not sure though we managed to get through it, I'm not sure we were at our best. And I want us to somehow find ways to work together as a board, because there are 7 votes, and all 7 of us must learn to work with each other to come away with what's best for our community. I mean, we came through this okay, but I believe we could have done better. And that's not to point fingers at anyone, but we need to do it better, a better job as a board, because there may be days and circumstances and challenges facing us as a community that will require an immediate response to a more urgent and critical issue than just hate speech being spewed out into our community. And I want us to back away and step back and ask those hard questions for us individually, and then as a board as a whole. I think we can gain ground if we do an honest assessment of where we are as a board and how we can do it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Threet. Commissioner McCool,
Motion to adjourn.
all in favor?